it was in May, late May, and I was a RTO for the platoon sergeant, and we were um, on a search and destroy mission. We were going sort of again hedgerow to hedgerow, but there were more villages around. It wasn't a free fire zone, and we came into this opening, and in front of us was probably the size of a football field turned, uh, maybe turned sideways, but it might have been 100 by 100 yards. And the platoon sergeant told one of the squad leaders to take a squad out across that field and enter into the look like a small hamlet right across the other side of the field through a hedgerow. And so Sergeant Hebert got his squad and he headed out across the field. And as he was walking out across the field, it became clear that that he was out in front, and his platoon was his squad wasn't keeping up with him. They were sort of either I don't know why they were behind him, but they were sort of on line, but they were considerably behind him, and he was out in front. He was heading towards an opening to walk into the hamlet, which if I were him, I wouldn't have been doing that, but that's what he was doing. So the platoon sergeant said, Jansen, get up there and help Hubert get his squad in order. And so I started running across the field and never thought of getting rid of the radio, but anyway, it turned out to be good that I kept it. And I misjudged how long it would take to get to him. And he was probably 10 feet from the hedgerow about to go through this opening into the hamlet. And the NVA were in that hedgerow in a number of dug in positions, and they opened fire on us, and they hit Hebert. He went down, and I was not hit, and I immediately fell to the ground and started and returned fire. And I realized right away that nobody was up there with me. It was me and Hebert, and he was on the ground in groaning in pain. And yeah, I realized I was in a world of trouble. So I was pretty scared, but I decided I had to control my fear. Not easy to do, but I had to do it, or I was never going to get out of that field. And so I started, raking the hedgerow with automatic fire, and then would, put a new magazine in, drop the old one out, put a new one in. I always carried my ammo pack where I could throw it in front of me. I flipped it open and started running through magazines, and then I realized I would run through 20 pretty fast at that rate. And so I flipped to semi-automatic and started trying to pick out targets, and it was pretty crazy. It was like a shooting gallery. And I was in the open, but I had a little bit, about a 3-inch berm where the village was sort of raised up. So I had this 3-inch berm in front of me, and I figured out the NVA they had to come out of their holes a little bit higher than they might have liked to be able to get a shot at me, but they were doing that, so I could see their heads and maybe even their shoulders popping out behind the bamboo and firing at me. And so I just started picking them out and trying to hit them. And I figured I had to do something to let them know that I guess that they were in a real firefight. So this went on, and I finally figured out that I had to do something about the bunker right in front of me. It was a bunker dead ahead of me, to the left of the opening into the hamlet. And so every time I popped up, I noticed that, and I fired, he went down. or whoever was in that bunker went down. And then I would go down to reload or whatever, or to try to control my fear. And that bunker, as well as the others, would keep on firing. And then when I would pop up and fire back, that bunker would go silent. I said, okay, I gotta do something to get this guy. I gotta pop up and fire and then stay here. And so that's what I did. And sure enough, I saw his AK-47. They were only 10 feet away. So I come through the bamboo, saw his head and shoulders, and I aimed and fired. And he went down.
So if I understand correctly, then you notice this pattern, which makes sense. You get up and fire, they take cover, your gun goes silent for a second, and then they come up. So they assume, okay, you're loading. So you thought, okay, I'm going to stay up. They're going to think I'm down and reloading. Then they're going to come up to fire at me, and that at that point, I'm gonna hit them.
Yes.
And you did that with more than one NVA, if I remember correctly. Is that
I
right?
did it with three. I did it with after I did it with the one right in front of me, I picked the one just to the right of the opening, the pathway to the hamlet. Did the same thing with that. So that was probably 15 feet away.
Wow.
And then I did the same thing with the bunker to the left, probably, again, about 15 feet away. And it worked. And and those three bunkers were quiet. I didn't believe they'd stay quiet, but they were quiet. So I had a slight bit of a reprieve. And so at that time, right about that time, I noticed a lot of yelling going on in the handset of my radio. I grab it, and it's my buddy Wagner, who carried the radio for the platoon leader. And he said, "What do you need? What can we do?" And I said, "Get the gun up on the left and get the 90 up on the right." And so that meant get Davis with his M60 up, try to give me some cover, and the guy who I can't remember his name, who carried the 90 millimeter, but he was good with it, over on the right hand side, at least as far as they could get up and start, you know, providing some cover. And at that time, I also noticed, I looked around and I saw a head, and I recognized Womble. And he was over behind a rice dike, and I yelled to him to give me cover, and he started firing. And I realized if I'm going to get out, that's where I'm going to head. I'm going to head towards where he is. And so I went back to firing, and I grabbed Hebert, who was still moaning on the ground, and I grabbed his foot and started pulling him, and then I'd fire, and then I'd pull him some more, and then it wasn't getting very far, and I was worried that the three bunkers were going to start to be active again right in front of me. So at that time, I heard the captain on my radio. He asked me what was going on. He said, "Is Hebert with you?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you get him out?" I said, "I don't know. I think I'm going to be dead any minute." Um, and he said, "Well, try to get him out." He said, I'm sending help." So by this point, I think Davis and the M90 were up firing. Wamba was firing, and all of a sudden, here came an Apache. It might have been two Apaches, I can't recall, but at least one. And he came down the hedgerow, strafing it with automatic weapons fire. And as he was doing that, I kept on trying to pull Hebert back. And then he came around again, and he put some rockets into the hedgerow. It was pretty wild because we were still pretty close. And then I still was pulling him back. And then all of a sudden, Hebert stood up and ran towards where Womble was. and he made it almost to the rice dike and got shot up again and went down. So I started returning fire and started backing up towards that position. And now it's like a real firefight because we got the M60s working, the 90s working, to some extent. There's only so many rounds you can carry. And I see the Apache coming around again for another. And by that point, I had reached Hebert. So he's laying there on the open side of the rice dike. And I said, okay, I got to get him over this rice dike, him and me. So I waited till the Apache was making a run. And I threw my M16 over the rice dike and I bent over and picked him up and fell over the rice dike with him. And it felt like I was back in New York. And I felt like I was so safe. I couldn't believe how safe I felt, which is really bizarre. I was probably at that point, I don't know, 30, 35 yards from the hedgerow, but it felt like miles.
Wow. Did Hebert make it?
No, Womble and I, he was still alive. Womble and I got him out. We had the rice dike to protect us. We carried him out, dragged him out, got him back to a medevac, and he died on the medevac. He died on the way out.